A very good morning to all of you. Since I'm given only 30 minutes, I will not be able to share with you my 34 years journey. That is from mid-70s to 2008. I will just take the next 30 minutes, share just 5 chapters, which I think they are key, which I feel are important for me to repeat some of the points that I may have delivered before. Now, in 1974, I responded to the URA's call to join the URA team to embark on a bold program to comprehensively redevelop the central area, the city center. Looking back, the work of an architect planner is never boring. So those of you who are hesitating to take up the course, please don't. Please do take up the course, because urban planning, urban design, and conservation of our built heritage is an adventurous and exciting journey. And I must say, I had an awesome roller coaster ride throughout the 34 years of my service. Now, I move on to the first chapter. How did conservation of built heritage begin in Singapore? Now, when the Urban Renewal Department began the renewal efforts in 1965, the emphasis was on clearance of slums, provision of affordable housing, and construction of public infrastructures at a rapid pace, as well as amalgamation of land for redevelopment by the private sector through the government sales of sites program. I think those of you who are born much later after independence, post-independence, you would not have seen, in fact, or before after 80s, you would not have seen how dilapidated the shop houses are. Each shop house may have about 10 families, and they were all unsewered. The toilets are just bucket system. As a young girl, I remember each time when you have to go to toilet, you close your eyes and you do this, because it's just impossible. You know, the primary goal then was to transform the city into a modern, efficient center for business, finance, and tourism. Now, while recognizing the value and need to conserve our heritage as early as the 70s, we have no choice but to go through a 15-year phase of demolishing old buildings, with some attempts at conservation. After a decade of successful urban redevelopment, Singapore's architects and planners realized in the early 80s that our city was losing its character. They were just concrete and grass, high-rise buildings that look like any other city. So we say, look, we are looking like any other city, and we are losing our sense of history and sense of place. So our desire then to capture our uniqueness, our identity, and our roots as manifested in a built environment led us to take a decisive steps towards urban conservation, to preserve our multifaceted heritage so that we can retain our city character and identity to set it apart from other modern cities of the world, so that you don't have to go to the library, to the museum, to know what Singapore was like, what the old historic district was like. Although new uses has taken place, that again, you know, uses come and go, lifestyle change, building evolves, you know, to adapt to the lifestyle. But I think the physical buildings on site gives our city a sense of history and sense of place. We have the contrast of old and new. So I'm purely speaking from the perspective of an architect and planner, not so much as a historian. So in early as 92, when the government decided to proceed with the mass rapid transit railway system, the URA's architects and planners quickly seized the opportunity to carry out a comprehensive review of the central area. Mr. Goh Hap Chor was seconded for HDB to URA, and he handpicked me to lead a team of architects and planners to work with him. And he told me, Wen Gin, all we need is 5 years. We'll get everything done. But it wasn't 5 years. My journey continued for another 14 years under the leadership of Mr. Goh. He was a tough master though, And another 12 years from 1996 after Mr. Goh decided to retire from URA to join the private practice. Now from 82 to 85, my team walked and combed the entire city center, each and every street. We carry out extensive archival research, etc., to do all the necessary groundwork before we start to review the city plan. So in 1985, after 3 years of real hard work, the URA's efforts to plan and guide development within the central area took on a third dimension with the completion of a central area structure plan and urban design plan. The plan recommended locations for intensive developments and conservation of significant historic districts, major green spaces, and hill parks such as Fort Canning Green and Pearls Hill Park as the lungs that breathe life into the city. The plan at that time also envisaged the extension of the downtown core into Marina Bay, the reclaimed land. Those of you who attended the first day session, my former colleague Cho Mei shared with you, also the plan that shows the structure plan and how we have to go about to do selective conservation so that we have enough land safeguarded for growth. I mean, if there's no growth, there's no economic growth, we will not be where we are today. So we have to strike a good balance between conserving what we feel is absolutely essential and what we have to say goodbye to, but we can record and document them in history books and in the archive. And I believe today, those of us who are collectors of old documents and old maps, like my husband, he still has a whole room full of old documents and old maps. He has been donating to the National Library so that they are made more accessible to public at large. I am happy that the Central Area Structure Plan and Urban Design Plan has since guided and facilitated the transformation of a city skyline, achieving a high-quality modern environment interwoven with historical, architectural, and cultural heritage of the older parts of Singapore. The timing was opportune. By the mid-80s, things began to change rapidly. This change was probably brought about by several key factors, which fortunately took place around the same time. It enabled the URA, architects, planners, and policymakers the confidence to proceed with conservation on a comprehensive scale, not isolated at STEM, small little street blocks, but on a large area basis. In the same year, 1985, the URA obtained the government's approval to conserve 10 historic districts comprising 3,400 shophouses. This makes up to about 4% of our city center developable land. It is, some of you may say it is small, but they are a very significant part of our city. Now, between 85 and 89, URA had to hard sell and convince the shophouse owners of the importance and value of conservation. We produced 3 conservation manuals in 1988. I'm not sure whether maybe most of you have no sight of that document, but I believe URA's library has a set. And it's a very useful set because it documents the past. We did a lot of archival search way back to the Raffles town map days and trace it to present then, that was in the 80s. We inventorized and recorded what was on site, what were the users, what were the buildings, etc., etc. And we have a plan inside that talks about moving forward, how we should go about to, introduce adaptive reuse so that the historic districts can come alive again. In April 1886, Tourism Board appointed a special task force from Pacific Asia Travel Association, known as PATA, to do a field study on Singapore's tourist attractions. Top of the minds of PATA experts will be the conservation of Singapore's heritage and culture. As mentioned by Didier, in 1987, Mrs. Pamela Lee invited our good friend Didier to carry out a demonstration project, a shop house at Armenian Street, which he shared with you just now, this morning. He shared his expertise with the local community and trained our local community how to read a building and how to go about to do proper restoration and good practices. And to my mind, I was telling Kevin we should invite Didier back again because we need to be re-educated again, need to refresh again. We need to bring back the human touch again so that we do proper good practices and not over-restored building, as Kanshua has shown us also on the first day. Because we tend to think new is good, old is bad. But on the other hand, we can't save all the old. We have to be selective. So having saved and protected what we have to make sure they still retain some degree of patina. Now, some of you may also say, yeah, so what? You conserve the buildings, but it has been gentrified. But life is such, all of us now, do we want to stay in a house that has no sewer system? No, right? So things have to move on, progress. Now, in 1987, after Didier did the demonstration project, we also initiated the restoration of 32 units, state-owned properties at Tanjung Pakar. But before that, we also did a pilot demonstration project within 4 months at 9 New Road, where the Queen visited. And to show that within 4 months, you can restore a building because you don't rebuild. You just do repair, restore, and, replacement. So we did the project to demonstrate government's commitment and to set an example to the private sector that dilapidated shophouses can be beautifully adapted for new uses. In 1988, Mrs. Pamela Lee, Senior Director of STB then, was appointed as a URA's board member. She was, and still is, a great champion for conservation. You will hear her story shortly. Now, PATA, STB, and Didier's strong support lend much weight to the success of the conservation program in Singapore. We are all very grateful for that. Thank you. Now, Didier mentioned just now a slide. He showed Boat Quay and see, they were going to demolish it in 1987. Why he say that? He was not aware that at the URAN we have already protected these areas for conservation. But we can't make public announcement yet because there were many issues that we have to address to find a solution, to find the necessary incentives before we could convince each and every one of the 5,000 over house owners why we are conserving these so-called crummy-looking, dilapidated shop houses. So we have to do all the necessary groundwork. They were all rent control, so we have to address that issue as well. We can't just declare lift the rent control because we have to take care of the people who are residing in these premises. Without them residing there, the buildings would have been long gone. And at the same time, URA was very fortunate. We have Mr. Lu Tei as URA's board member from 1979 all the way to 1992. And he was the URA's CEO and chief planner from 1989 to 92. He was also a strong supporter for conservation and a great leader for physical master planning and urban design. Now, in 1989, the Planning Act and the URA Act were amended to provide for the appointment of URA as the conservation authority, the designation of the conservation areas, the enforcement of conservation requirements, and the formulation of conservation guidelines. So in the same year, 89, we staged a public exhibition, unveiled the conservation master plan for the entire city center, which goes beyond just the 3 historic districts. a guideline was prepared for each and every one of the shop house. You would ask yourself, how is it possible? But it was possible because we got our photographer to photograph each and every building face on. And our team of staff would then create all the elements through research into a computer system. And we could call upon these elements and look at the photographs like a detective trying to discern what were the original features, what were the elements that are missing, so that we could then put them all together so that the owners has a guide to restore. We also embarked on a series of programs to promote good conservation practices. We consulted the private sector and promoted conservation to several exhibitions, multiple exhibitions, in fact, education forums, symposiums, and also set up a recognition award. I will share with you why we need to set up a recognition awards later. And during this period, we also work closely with the Singapore Institute of Architects to review and fine-tune the conservation guidelines, because there were many debates, in particular on how much we should control and how much we should relax so that these shop houses could be suited to new users. And also, there were lots of debate on whether we should freeze the operator and trades on site, because some quarters of the private sector will say we should freeze them. They should continue on site. But on the other hand, some of the traditional trade, like wooden clock makers, how many of you still have a pair of wooden clocks in your house? Okay, very few hands, you know. So the trades cannot survive. But those trades that can survive, you can still find them on site today. I mean, that is the facts of life, you know. So, after we had the major historic district protected, we wasted no time. We continued to rework several areas in the so-called secondary settlement area that is on the fringe of the city center, such as Chuchet, Geylang, Balestier, and so on. They were earlier identified for conservation, significant for conservation, but which required further studies as these streets blocks were sited in locations immediately adjacent to new high-rise developments. So the loss of development potential was an issue. So between 89 and 92, my team worked long, happy hours after 5, and we came up with a creative win-win solution of an integrated old and new approach. Some of you may not agree with that, but that was one solution for us to save at least the front of these shop houses. But we ensure that the rear, that we allow them to demolish and rebuild, it is of a scale 4-5 story, and as viewed from the street across from the road, the sight line is such that the new building that is not imposing. So you can still keep that human scale of the streetscape. Now, this solution appears to be simple at first glance, as if it's just with a stroke of a pen. But implementing this approach meant that we have to carry out detailed simulations for each and every one of the 2,000 plus shop houses to test what is the maximum floor area achievable. So finally, after 2,000 simulations, in 1992, we obtained the government's approval to gazette another 5 areas for conservation. Later on, we applied a similar approach to other heritage areas, such as China Square and the Pras Pasar Bugis Entertainment District. The success of the detailed master planning, urban design, and conservation works involved for the Pras Pasar Entertainment area, in close collaboration with the public and private partnerships, won the inaugural Cityscape Asia 2008 Real Estate Awards under the category of Architecture, Best Urban Design and Master Planning. I will read to you now the jury statements. It says, Pras Pasar Bugis is a shining example of Singapore's strategy to constantly update its urban design and infrastructure through a collaborative approach involving government organizations, private enterprises, and public representatives. The quarter-century-long program has transformed this distressed, deteriorating area through a free market economics and physical and public planning into a vibrant mixed-use districts of arts, culture, learning, and entertainment. You know, it took us 25 years to constantly review and for the area to evolve to be what it is today, where you have all the LaSalle, NAFA, SOTA Art School, SMU, and so on. I will have to end my chapter 1 here. I don't have the time to cover all the other stories. I will move on to chapter 2. What were the challenges? Now, with the legal protection of 15 conservation areas comprising of a total of over 5,000 buildings, by 1992, the next phase of conservation work was to guide and facilitate owners, architects, engineers, including contractor, how to go about to carry out good practices. The course of conservation in Singapore has not been an easy one. Those of us involved directly do need to have a high degree of passion and perseverance. There were many problems to resolve. So conservation is really a labor of love. Initially, many owners preferred to take the expedient approach of demolishing the old building and rebuilding a replica, replacing timber floor with concrete, replacing structure party walls with concrete columns and beams. This was obviously not acceptable. I think this not only took place in the early 90s, but perhaps even today. So quite often when I drove around and I see a building all wrapped up, I will alert URA and say, please go behind the canvas and see what's going on. You find the whole roof is gone, or you find the whole building is gone, because they cover it out so nicely, and if you don't go look, you can't see. So I think we do need to invite Didier back to show how to go about to conserve. Now, in 1990, with all these issues at hand, we were learning ourselves, you know. So we engaged 3 UK conservation specialists to critique and conduct workshops over a period of 2 weeks, not 3 days, with our professionals in order to elevate our conservation practice closer to international standards. We also approached Ida Bhatia, a Straits Times journalist then, because we need to educate the public at large, to write a series of A to Z featured articles on good conservation practice. And she did that as a full-page article almost every other day. Then I have one of my conservation officer, Kwa Soon Hong, to help to collate a set of 5 cm thick facts and figures and reference material so that Ida has a background. And she will then interview various people in the industry and publish full-page articles weekly. And that did, to some degree, help to educate everybody. So in 1995, we feel the need to introduce an architectural heritage scheme to encourage developers, architects, engineers, and contractors to practice the 3 R's and top-down approach. The 3 R's stand for maximum retention, sensitive restoration, and careful repair. Top-down, protect the roof, repair the roof so that it is protected and you can work inside. However, we do allow selective alterations to the interior of a building to accommodate the needs of new users. Likewise, enhancement and restoration works using appropriate new materials and contemporary construction techniques are allowed. 10 years on, I'm happy that our effort was rewarded in 2006. The Singapore Conservation Program won the ULI Asia Pacific and Global Awards for Excellence. ULI stands for Urban Land Institute. I will now read to you the jury's statement. It says, in a rapidly modernizing country, Singapore has established a model conservation program to preserve its rich heritage of vernacular building and colorful neighborhoods, using a collaborative approach involving government organizations, the public, and developers. The Island Republic's URA has achieved a balance between free market economics and cultural conservation. For those of you who like to know more about the URA's conservation journey, I suggest you buy a book that was written by Lily Kong in 2011. The book entitled Conserving the Past, Creating the Future. It documents almost everything, our entire journey up to 2011. I will now move on to chapter 3. What were the critical success factors? Now, 8 key factors contributed to success of our conservation program. 1, availability of alternative land in Marina Bay and other areas for new intensive developments. We did large tract of reclaimed land, something like 800 to 900 hectares of land right in front of our business financial center. What you see today, part has been redeveloped, Marina Bay. But there are still lots of land, including Marina East, for our growth and our needs over the next 50 years and beyond. You know, we are such a small little red dot, we have to be very kiasu, you know, and save things in our pocket so that when the time comes, we still have them. Now, 2, delayed encroachment to historic districts. They were planned as the last phase of urban renewal, and they were all under rent control, heavily encumbered. 3, good timing, public interest and awareness coincided with the completion of major development programs and healthy state of economy. 4, comprehensive planning approach. After combing the city center, subsequently, URA staff combed the entire island. When I say comb, literally comb, because I was a tough master as well. Then we had timely formulation, implementation, and completion of the Conservation Master Plan, which was also one of the success factors. We did not delay, we did not sit on it, we make decision and we move on and we march on. 5, government endorsement and commitment. In 1989, we had our legislation enacted. We have funding for infrastructure to lay all the public sewers, to open up the back lane that were heavily encumbered. And we implemented pilot projects, all completed expediently. 6, pragmatic and well-coordinated conservation policy. We offered incentives, but these incentives are practical and affordable to the government. 7, contribution from the private sector through a healthy public-private partnership. 8, the last key factor, but very important, solid professional preparation and dedicated people. I have many of my former staff, they are still in this room. Many of us have retired, but many others stay on, like Kevin Ang, Lai Hui Jin, Cho Mei Siu Ling, and they are all there to continue the march and to impart their knowledge to the next generation. So I must say, the Singapore conservation journey, as I said earlier on, is not just the mind. It is the heart. It's a labor of love, because without which you will be surmounted. You will be surrounded by so many problems, so many issues, and you can't get approval because you have to convince why and what are the opportunity costs, what are the potential loss, and so on. So it's a lot of hard work. And we did all this primarily for Singaporeans, the next generation. Tourism is secondary. We were very fortunate to have 2 ministers of national development who were very, very supportive of conservation. They are Mr. S. Danabalan and Mr. Ma Tan. When Mr. Danabalan traveled overseas for other meetings, not conservation, he will bring back photos, documents of conservation and hand them to me. So that shows how dedicated he is. Now, chapter 4. Beyond conservation of built heritage. Upon my appointment as chief planner in 2001, I began to identify programs that URA should undertake for the 2003 Master Plan Review. My team and I mooted several initiatives to enhance the quality of physical environment and quality of life, as well as strengthening the identity of the entire island. 2 key sets of plans were prepared and adopted as key layers of the 2003 Statutory Master Plan. The first key plan is the Identity Plan in 2001. I'm going very fast because I'm given 1 minute only. We saw the need to take stock and review our development strategy going forward beyond conservation of built heritage to see how we can give a helping hand to retain the charm and character of certain places that have evolved over time and which hold a special place within the hearts of the local community. So the plan is a Land Use Plus plan. It combines ideas and proposals on how to keep and enhance the special character of the places with land use planning as part of the 2003 Master Plan Review. Our aim was to ensure that such places will not be wittingly destroyed as we progress. The Identity Plan aims to bring out the charms of 15 areas to help forge a sense of belonging in Singaporeans. The 15 areas were grouped under 4 clusters, namely Old World Charm, Urban Villages, Southern Ridges, and Rustic Coasts. So many of them are there, and they are alive. This 2003 plan ensures that places and buildings that have evolved over time and have become rooted within the community are retained and will continue to be relevant to our people both today and the future. The second key plan is the Parks and Water Bodies Plan. To bring Singapore Garden City to the next phase as a city in a garden, the key is to heighten the sense of greenery and islandness. The 2003 Master Plan proposed an island-wide network of park connectors to connect parks, water bodies with residential areas. The comprehensive network of green also serves to enhance accessibility to nature areas and attempts to weave nature with the built environment. Nature areas throughout the entire island were recognized and acknowledged as a layer on the 2003 Statutory Master Plan for the first time. I will now end with the last chapter. One more minute. Moving forward, in 2004, URA worked in collaboration with Dr. Wong Yin Chi of NUS, RIDAS, and SIA. We staged 2 major exhibitions, one in 2005 known as Singapore 121 City Centre, and the other one in 2007 known as Singapore Island 121. The 2 exhibitions featured a selection of over 100 buildings significant in architecture and urban design built over the last 40 years, between 1965 to 2005, post-independence. They serve to raise awareness and demonstrate the diversity and creative energy of our architectural talent in Singapore. The exhibitions and publication of 2 volumes of books provided as a valuable archival record of buildings designed and developed mainly by our local architects and local developers since post-independence. They serve as an inventory for further studies. Moving forward, to my mind, in order to extend the lifespan of these significant post-independent buildings, there is a greater need for public and private partnership. We need to develop a pragmatic process and mechanism, including appropriate incentives. I use the word appropriate incentives. Incentives that are sensitive to why we are extending the life of this building, either retention or conservation, to encourage these buildings to be retained or conserved voluntarily by the owners. You know, I remember Curitiba, the mayor, came to Singapore for one of a seminar, and he told us in Curitiba, the way to do a good project is to minus a 0 from the budget. In conclusion, to me, the last 5 decades was a period of optimism, experimentation, and the can-do spirit. as we tackle the challenges of building a modern, dynamic global city and striking a good balance in conserving Singapore's built and natural heritage. However, to the young people here, the Singapore we have today did not happen by chance. It was a lot of hard work and strong leadership by all our political leaders, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and his cabinet. Looking back the last 50 years, we can see how the miracle of Singapore's nationhood, mirrored by her history of urban development and conservation, has been a continuous journey of evolution and re-evaluation. It is a journey. We have not come to the end of a journey. There is still a lot that we can do together. Last year, we celebrated SG50 with joy. To me, planning a city employs the mind and also a lot of heart. On this note, I look forward to the public and private sector working together in partnership to continue the journey towards achieving a happy SG 100. Thank you.